Hello, and welcome to the Science Fiction and Fantasy Marketing Podcast, the show where we help you establish your author brand, increase the size of your audience, and sell more books. I'm Lindsay Baroker, and I'm here with Jeffrey Poole and Joe Lalo, and we have a special guest again this week. Well, not again with him, but we have a guest again, and he's special this week.
Just this week.
And our guest is Bryan Cohen. He's the author of the YA science fiction / fantasy series Ted Saves the World. And he just published it last summer, but he's already sold more than 35,000 copies. He just got his third book out, so we're going to be asking him all about that. Before jumping into fiction, he published a number of creative writing prompts books, and that's how we got his start. And he's also the co-host of the Sell More Books podcast. Oh, and this is important to include, which I found out on his Amazon page. He's been a contestant on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. So if you need some tips, I'm sure he's a millionaire after being on the show. And he currently lives in Chicago with his wife and their Netflix account, which must be important because that's on his Amazon page too. Hey, Bryan, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, happy to be here.
Awesome, Russ. Can you hear my pages again? You know I gotta have notes. All right, well, I'm going to jump in and ask a couple of introduction questions, and then I'm going to hand you over to Jeff or Joe or whoever we decided goes next for lots of marketing stuff, because you've really done great with your first fantasy series there, so we want to hear all about it. First off, though, do you want to tell us about your nonfiction and kind of what got you started with self-publishing in the first place?
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to. In 2008, I started a blog called buildcreativewritingideas.com. And it was kind of to motivate myself to write, and so I was writing essays about motivation, and I also wrote creative writing prompts, story starter kind of stuff. And it turned out that those creative writing prompts pages were way more popular than anything else I was writing, and so I started making a ton of them. And by August 2010, when self-publishing was starting to happen, I realized I had enough maybe to throw into a book, put them into a book of 1,000 of them, and started selling that on Amazon in September 2010. And it did really, really well, to the point that I made 4 sequels, spun them off into a bunch of different workbooks, and the site grew a lot over that time. And I always wanted to do fiction as well. I mean, I'm writing all these ideas of fiction-y stories, but they're just 2 lines to try to get other people to do it, and I wasn't making myself do it. So I tried to do a novella in 2011. It didn't really go anywhere, and I didn't make any effort to make it do anything, and it was a kind of the novella version of Ted Saves the World. And then in like you said, in mid-2014, I published Ted Saves the World as a novel, and I wrote 2 more novels in that series, and I'm really happy with how it's done so far, and I'm talking about it all the time on Sell More Books Show with Jim, and we have a good time on there.
Yeah, you seem, I've listened to, I think, most of the shows at this point. You seem to have really that entrepreneurial spirit and, you know, trying to make things work, whatever you're working on. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the stories before we start grilling you on what you've tried for marketing on them?
Yeah, sure. That sounds great. So Ted Saves the World is one of those that kind of goes across several different categories. I mean, I'm lucky I found out about KDP categories from you, Lindsay, and from others, because this one definitely needed more than 2. It's a young adult sci-fi fantasy, like you said. It's a superhero book. It's kind of a little bit of paranormal, a little bit of horror, so it's really across the board. It's about it's young adult. It's about a 16-year-old kid who gets superpowers and a undead cheerleader who comes back from the grave to protect him, and they have to fight the forces of evil. And it's kind of a Joss Whedon-y inspired, quirky dialogue comedy mixed in with the tragedy. I've always loved a little bit of pain mixed in with the pleasure, so I try to use that whenever I can. And I mean, this was my first novel, and it it's a little rough around the edges, you know, like every first novel, but I got a lot of really good feedback on it, and I said right in the beginning when I was going to do it that it was going to be multiple books. I knew, like, I had multiple promotions planned out for writing multiple books, and even though it was my first novel, I really tried to set myself up for success, which I think has helped me a lot with that series.
Yeah, it definitely helps if you know from the beginning that you actually want to do a series and you can able to plan ahead for sure. I hope you're not like making people love your characters and then ruthlessly killing them off the way. I still haven't forgiven Josh Whedon for killing Wash in Serenity. So,
Yeah.
spoiler alert, but
Spoiler alert. Serenity's been out for a while. I
yeah,
think
just
that's
a
okay.
decade or so.
Yeah,
But
I haven't made any terrible murders yet, but that isn't to say I don't have any plan for my next book.
all right. Well, I'm kind of curious because it sounds like you said you got the first novella, maybe sort of, in 2011, and then all of a sudden we jumped to 2014, and you've written the first three books in this series in about 6 months. What do you think changed for you that really motivated you to start writing and publishing the fiction and really getting it out there?
Well, I think there were two main things. I think Sell More Book Show really helped because for any listeners who haven't seen it, basically me and Jim Kukroll from Author Marketing Club, we find some news stories from the past week and some tips. And every week I'm basically researching what's going on and what people are doing. And I think it started a couple months before I was going to put out Ted Saves the World, and I just saw like there's an opportunity here, and if I do it the right way, if I not only from the writing side, like I finally started outlining with story beats, and I had never done that. I used to do improv comedy, so I thought, no, I'll pants the heck out of this. I'll be great. But it wasn't the case, and I could never really get, because I tried to write 4 or 5 novels before TED, and I never finished one. And this isn't like I got 1,000 words in and stopped. It was like I wrote myself into a hole like 70,000 words in and couldn't find my way out. So with TED, I had a system in place. I wrote down, you can see, I don't know if you can see it in the non-HD frame, but I have my year at a glance calendar in the background. I plotted out every day I'm going to outline, every day I'm going to write, and that way I knew, like, this is my deadline, it has to happen that day. So the system, figuring out a system was one, and the other was just seeing what everyone's doing, getting excited, getting motivated from what others are doing, and as opposed to, I mean, you could go the other way. You could beat yourself up saying, "Oh, I'm so far behind," but like I tried to take it the other direction.
That's definitely a professional way to do it for sure. And I do see your calendar. It also looks very professional.
Ah, thanks.
Yeah, nothing too crazy over there.
Yeah.
But I've had kind of the same experience with the podcast. Actually, just listening. You know, I remember when the self-publishing podcast guys started their show a couple years ago. You know, and they're talking about like, yeah, I wrote 5,000 to 6,000 words a day, and that's an average day. And I was like, dang, I'm doing this full time, and I am not writing anywhere near that. And it's really been sort of seeing that other people are accomplishing things that kind of made me push myself and realize, you know, I should be putting these books out a little faster, not slacking off quite so much. So I recommend everybody at least listen to the podcasts, Brian's podcast and our podcast, of course, because it can be motivating for sure.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
one more question for me before I turn you over to the guys. You've had a great success with this series starting out. How far is it going to go, and are you already like thinking of the next series?
Well, the I do have a second series in mind, but I'm kind of keeping that waiting in the wings just to see. I mean, should I just spin off this series when I'm done if it's so popular? But currently the plan is 7 books. I also want to write a prequel novella as a way to funnel people into my email list, and also because I have an idea for a story. It's, a combination of artistry and commerce right there. I know I need something to get people into my mailing list, so coming up with the novella for that. But I mean, at first, my plan was way dumber than what I ended up doing. And my first plan was I was going to write 3 series starters for 3 different series, and then I was going to see which one did the best. But while I was working on the first one, I realized that's just dumb because you can't really see any traction necessarily until you have at least a few books out in a series. And so I ended up focusing on this one and deciding I'm going to write all 7 books in a row, not going to let any other projects get in between. This is what I got to do, and it's the best path toward having some success with it.
Sounds like a great plan. I'm not that good at sticking to things like that. I always like, shiny ideas. Oh, new series. We have to start a new series today. But I do have one more question I thought of before. I'm never going to let the guys talk. They don't need to talk.
No.
It's my show. They don't know what it is. But last question. I just was wondering if you had any tips since we were kind of talking about increasing productivity. It sounds like you've I've been listening to you on the other show, and it sounds like you kind of went from maybe like 1,000 or 2,000 words a day to writing your last novel there in just 6 weeks or so, was it?
Yeah, 6 or 7 weeks. Yeah. Well, productivity tips. I think having a space where you'll only write and do nothing else has been one of the biggest things for me. When I started writing Ted Saves the World, I did almost all my writing in a dedicated workspace. It's a co-op office space for writers in Chicago called the Chicago Writers Workspace. And it's just one of those great little, like, it was like created on some magical writer fairyland where everyone is in a writer's paradise, and it's just, I'm so lucky that it's there. It has a quiet room, it has little conference rooms and whatnot, and every morning I would hop on the bus. It's about 20-minute bus ride up to the place. On the bus ride, I write my to-do list down for the day, close it up, turn off my phone, or put it in airplane mode, and start writing. And when I wrote Ted Saves the World and Mind Over Easy, the second book, I was writing for 2 hours a morning, and when I was working on Portal Combat, the third book, I was writing 4.5 hours every morning. And writing, the goal was 5,000 words. Some days it was as much as 6,000. But I mean, it wasn't like super speedy because some people write like 2,000 words an hour, which I still think is crazy. My carpal tunnel acts up just thinking about it. But it was all about just getting out of the house, forcing myself to a locked-in schedule, making that place sacred for writing. Those things were definitely have to be like far number one. I don't even know what's number two, but it's way down on the list. And I think that was the biggest thing for me.
Okay, that place sounds totally awesome. I've never heard of
Yeah.
anything exactly like that. I went to a co-working space for a while in Phoenix, but it seemed like it was more kind of solo entrepreneurs, and I don't know when they ever got work done. It seemed like everybody was just chatting all the time and
Yeah.
networking.
Uh,
So the writing thing sounds awesome.
yeah,
But
I'm pretty lucky.
that's a good tip, though. I mean, I know a lot of people kind of have that same thing. Like if they take their headphones and go to Starbucks for a couple hours or something, it's just so much easier to get things done.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
But I'm going to go ahead and pass you on to the guys now. I think Jeff's going to jump in next. And we were curious, we know you've done a lot of Facebook events, or I guess at least 3 or so, and you've
Yeah.
actually sold quite a few books, it sounds like. So that's what we want to know about, because I always see authors doing this, and I don't always see a lot of participation. So,
Yeah, yeah. Sure.
all right, Jeff, why don't you take over for now?
Alrighty, marketing and podcast and Facebook. Okay, my first question would be: is what made you start the Sell More Books podcast with Jim? I mean, do you think it helps marketing your books, be it fiction or nonfiction, or do you think it's more about networking with other authors?
I definitely think it's more about networking with other authors. I've made some great connections from there. You have to go down a certain path. If you're going to be marketing fiction, there are certain things you need to be doing. And if you're going to be either marketing nonfiction or trying to make connections, you need to be doing certain things. Talking about marketing on a podcast like this podcast, I think it's going to help other authors, but there's probably not going to be too many readers who are tuning in. I mean, you never know. It depends on how you guys market it, but I think that Sell More Book Show, I didn't know at first, because you never know when these projects start exactly how it's going to work out, but it's really helped us connect with a lot of different authors, and I've learned a lot. So it was really research plus other author connections, I would say.
As Lindsay was saying, you've done several Facebook events. I mean, over the last year. Do you want to tell us a bit about them and what your goals were for each one of them?
Sure. I've actually run 6 of them, 2 nonfiction events and 4 fiction events. So I've learned a lot about kind of what works with either. And like a lot of people will tell you, nonfiction marketing is easier. It's when you have a targeted question with the 2 events we ran for the nonfiction, which were March to a Bestseller and March to a Bestseller 2, they were focused on answering how do I write, how do I market, how do I publish. Those are easy. Fiction was definitely more of a challenge. I ran 4 different events based around different genres, and I think that I learned a lot during those. Only 1 or 2 of them really did okay in selling books, but I think it was more for finding just a few dedicated fans, maybe a few dedicated new fans, so you could cross-pollinate from one author to another, or finding other authors to work with. And I actually created a really great mastermind group of different authors from one of those events, and that might have been the best sticking point from them. But I didn't really say what the events were. Basically, it's multiple authors all coming together, all discounting one book at the same time on a certain day, coming to Facebook, and over the course of 12 hours, multiple authors coming in during different 2 to 3 hour slots to talk with readers, to invite their readers to come and chat with them, to give stuff away, to, I don't know, there's all sorts of options, but basically it's one place where a ton of readers of a certain genre can come together and meet authors, ask questions, and win some prizes. And I think that there's more that can be done with a fiction event. I think I haven't found the secret sauce for that one completely yet, but I'm really happy with the connections I've made from them, and I have found new fans that came to me from those events, but not hundreds of fans, a few here and there.
How did you get the other authors to participate? I mean, do you have any idea how many readers stopped by and how many books the authors ended up selling?
Yes, and I didn't keep great track of the first event, but I kept much better track of the last 5. And I mean, just to show you the gap between the fiction and the nonfiction, we had 16 authors in each of the fiction events and 20 authors in the nonfiction event. So not that much different in numbers wise. But the fiction event, at most, we sold 100 to 200 books, and that's everybody combined. For the nonfiction event, we actually sold 3,500 books, all in that one day, divided over the 20 people. And so that, for nonfiction authors, I mean, that was a bang-up job. Everyone was, I mean, 10 out of the 20 authors were in the top 1,000 on Kindle, killing it in the categories. And the fiction events, they ranked in the categories as well, but it wasn't like the top 10. It's just everyone got into the top 100.
I never would have called that. The nonfiction got more hits than the actual fiction one. That is really cool. I
Yeah.
have a question for you. What kind of prizes did they give away to entice readers to stop by? Do you know?
Yes. Well, I was organizing the whole thing, so trust me,
Oh, there
I
you go.
know every single prize, and it hurt me greatly to know all that information. No, I I think that I mean I tried to encourage the authors to give away something that maybe was a little bit different. In the fiction events, there were authors who were giving away the rights to name a character, and there are people giving away jewelry that's found in the book. There were people giving away audiobooks, free audiobooks, people giving away the sequel to the book that they were pitching in the event, signed paperbacks, all sorts of different stuff. And in the and one of the other reasons that the nonfiction I think performed well is because there's some things that just lend themselves so well to giveaways. I mean, we had Steve Scott on board, and Steve Scott, he makes six figures a quarter off of his nonfiction books, so he's a big name in the industry. And he gave away a 30-minute phone consultation with him, and we did that through a Rafflecopter giveaway. And for those of you guys who are familiar with Rafflecopter, there are all these social sharing incentives, and we also used a thing called King Sumo giveaways. Both of them, if someone who enters shares one of the giveaways, they actually get extra entries into the giveaway. So there are people probably sharing this all over Facebook, all over Twitter to try to get that consultation with Steve Scott, or in the fiction case to try to get an audiobook or a signed copy. And when all the authors are asking all of their readers to share all of the giveaways, you hope that there's this magical combination where everybody is just spreading it all over and it goes extremely viral. And that really happened with the last nonfiction event. And like I said, still trying to figure out the exact way to get the fiction one to be as strong. But I mean, the two biggest fiction events had 400 and 500 attendees on Facebook, which we were still very happy with.
Very, very cool. Yeah, that is. So this guy makes, you said, six figures each quarter. That's freaking impressive.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Okay, so are there any secrets to doing well with the Facebook events? I mean, I've been involved in a few of them, and I usually don't. I mean, I think the last one I participated when it required me to be at my computer for a full hour straight answering questions.
Hmm.
Don't get me wrong. I was able to network with a couple other authors, several authors. A lot of readers stopped by. I think I gave away a couple of cafe press get goodies like hats and decks of cards, that sort of thing there.
Yeah.
But obviously you've done this enough times so it's actually working well for you. I mean, what secrets are you willing to pass along to us?
Well, I'm definitely willing to pass on a few. I'm also going to be doing a talk about this next week at Jim Kukril's Author Marketing Live virtual event, which is at authormarketinglive.com. And I'll be giving a whole hour presentation just on the Facebook events. But I think the real secret is getting the authors to be motivated to participate. I mean, like you said, you were maybe somewhat begrudgingly in front of the computer for an hour, and you could have been doing other things, better things. And I think that some of these Facebook events fall short by having only maybe one author on at a time. I think when you have multiple authors together and you invite them all to a chat with each other, they kind of have fun doing that, and that's a little bit of incentive for the authors. But also, I mean, I've had some success with this, so if I run an event, I might be more able to get people on board than maybe someone doing it for the first time. So I think having proof that you can do it, having like you maybe run a few of these events, smaller ones, and you start building up some street cred, then you can maybe more easily convince other authors to join in. But if there's any kind of secret, I think that It's making the authors accountable. I did a Google Doc that had a list that everyone could see of what each author was going to give away and what each author was going to do to promote the event. So if there's a blank space next to someone's name, there's a little bit of social pressure there. Like, oh, okay, I guess I'll share it with my email list. I guess I'll give this cool thing away. And I think that certainly helped with the last event that I did this past year.
Okay, I have a question for you regarding with what you just said. The last couple of Facebook events I did, it was just one author at a time. Now, you mentioned that you had multiple authors all going at it. If you have that many authors all chatting it back and forth, don't you kind of get lost in the kind of like being lost in a crowd sort of thing? I mean, how do you keep order and control and all that so you're not just like lost in the bottom of the pile?
It is a little chaotic. I'm not gonna lie. I try to make it chaotically poetic, if that's a thing. I mean, I try to be open with the authors right off the bat that it's going to be crazy. There's going to be threads with over 100 comments on it. If people comment on a thread that you posted and 20 people do it, you're going to have to respond to all of those. It's going to be nuts. But I think that's part of the draw for the readers because it is a little bit of author networking and it's author selling books, but I mean, you got to work for it. You got to work for the sales, and one of the ways you work for the sales is by being bombarded by a crazy amount of comments, and the readers love that you're just trying to keep up and chatting with them. And I mean, almost all the other authors from the last couple of events said, like, it was nuts, I could barely keep up with it, and I had a good time. And so I'm going to go ahead and say that's definitely a feather in my cap. If they can enjoy themselves while they're in the chaos, then so much the better. But yeah, it's tough to keep up for sure.
All right, my final question would be regarding brand spanking new authors there. Would you recommend authors utilize like all the social media that they have at their fingertips? I mean, like for instance, the Twitter, the Facebook, the Instagram, and whatnot. And are there some that you recommend more than others?
Well, I think first and foremost is email list. For sure, above any social thing, email list is number one. All social media activities you do, the number one priority in those activities should be to get people to your email list. That doesn't mean join my email list posts like 5 times a day, but it does mean that you need to keep that in mind as your primary goal, because if Facebook suddenly goes kaput tomorrow and it gets replaced by Sue or whatever, however you pronounce that other one, if it gets taken away, then all your Facebook work's going to be for naught. But there's a lot of ways to do that on those platforms. I mean, if you have a Facebook fan page, you can have a tab on your Facebook fan page for people to sign up for your email list. When you do giveaways like through Rafflecopter or King Sumo giveaways, you can get people to your email list. But as far as if there's one that works the best, I mean, I'm incredibly intrigued by Pinterest. The people I know who do Pinterest well do incredible things with it. Joanna Penn does pretty well. There was one other person that I'll send you guys an email later with the person. But there are some people that have 1,000 to 5,000 Pinterest followers on there, and they just have such a good time doing it because they're very visual people. And a study we reported on at Somewhere Book Show said that Pinterest is actually one of the best platforms for direct sales over Facebook, over Twitter, which was surprising to me. And I think that it's something that the few authors who are taking advantage of it and using it well, I think they're doing a great job with it. But I gotta, you didn't mention it, but I gotta put in a little word for YouTube because I've been doing a YouTube show, and I don't know if it's going to work. I'm doing this daily show called the Bryan Cohen Showin', and I have no idea if it's going to work. It's silly, goofy. Um, I really I get to use these theater chops that I built up in college that I spent a lot of money on getting but didn't really use. And now I'm using it hopefully to promote my books and get people to like who I am, so if they download my books, they see a little bit of me in those books.
Yep, I definitely can't forget YouTube, yeah, because like I said, we started all of YouTube with this channel as well, so can't discredit that. But that's my last question. Joe, it's on over to you.
Alrighty. Well, that question sort of led into my first one. You've had a lot of success with Facebook, and you've spoken now about the other social networks that you think are useful, Pinterest and like that. Now, specifically with Facebook, we're talking about events, and do you think any of the other social networks lend themselves as well to that sort of thing? Like, do you think any of the other social networks would be good for an event-style promotion?
Well, people do Twitter chats. They have a certain hashtag that they'll all post on that hashtag so that people can follow it on their Hootsuite or Buffer social media apps, and so that they can keep following it and respond to it. And there are people who do weekly Twitter chats, and you could just as well do a Twitter party, but I think Twitter's hard. I've been challenged by Twitter before. I think that um, there are people who use it really well. They're making sure they have their groups curated, which is something I've never done very well on there. But the people who do it, they get their groups followed, all sorts of stuff. I think that I think that Twitter is probably the most likely other one, but I'll mention YouTube again. You have a hangout there, and you can get people on board to show up. Depending if you do the right kind of event, I don't know, almost make it like a silly telethon sort of thing, where there's different people speaking and different people presenting books and whatnot. That could be a lot of fun, and you tap into that YouTube audience, which is a little bit younger, a little bit more tech savvy. They have faster internet connection. I don't know, but I think that Twitter and YouTube could be other event possibilities, but Facebook, because they actually have an event built in, you can create. They have a thing that says create event. That's not as easily functional on a platform that maybe doesn't have something that's a point-and-click system.
That's definitely true. Google Plus also has an event system built in, but it seems like Google Plus just hasn't taken the world by storm like many had hoped that perhaps.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, let's talk about your YouTube. You have the Bryan Cohen showing.
Mhm.
Let's hear some words about that and why you started it.
All
You
right.
spoke a little
Well,
bit, but
I was inspired by Simon Whistler from the Rocking Self-Publishing podcast, and he leads a double, maybe even a triple life. He's a YouTube sensation for these great top 10 lists that he does, and he's been doing these 7 days a week of content. Has over 2 million views on his videos. I mean, it's incredible to see what he's done. And from talking with him, he said that the 7 day a week thing is huge because there are channels that are terrible, that just do 7 days a week of content and they're out of control. For instance, there's this terrible really is the right word for it, but I'll go with horrible YouTube channel that has this family of channels of basically the concept is these 7 like teenager or 7 tweens or 7 gymnastic girls, and they get 7 different people to do a different show every week. And these are terribly stupid. They're perfect for like 12-year-old girls to watch. And these channels have a million, 2 million subscribers, not just views. And I said, look, I know I'm never going to get up to those heights, but if I can find an audience, if I can find people who like me for my personality and my dashing good looks, then I am going to find people who want to buy the books. So the Bryan Cohen Show is a 7-day-a-week channel. Each day of the week, I kind of treat it like a TV show. There's a different show on each day of the week. There's a couple that are kind of book related, a couple related to being a superhero. There's one with my cat. There's a nerdy thing. It's all over the place. It really is, and that's almost by design. It's kind of like the SPP guys with their series. It's with their different series. I hate series plural, but it's the same sort of thing where I'm hoping that if I can just branch out, maybe I can pull some people in.
Yeah, so you're mainly targeting then like just sort of well, first off, readers. This is not like unlike the podcast where you're targeting authors. This is you're trying to get the eye of potential readers.
Yes, it's definitely targeting new people.
Yeah, it seems like it's a good idea because we've spoken in the past that it's sort of come up. Lots of people market their books, and obviously that's effective. But the most effective thing is to market yourself, because if people are a fan of you and follow you, then they'll implicitly be following your books. So this seems like it's a very good way to literally just put your face out there for people to find.
Oh yeah, for sure.
How long have you been at it? Are you enjoying it? And have you seen the impact on it yet?
Well, it's definitely too early to tell. As of today, it's I guess the 20th today. So my goal was one video every day for 2015. So I'm at 20 videos. I've succeeded so far. I just recently passed 1,000 views. Nothing crazy. I have 68 subscribers. A lot of them came from Sell More Book Show or my fiction email list, and I mean, so far, I can't tell. From what I've heard, you almost need to wait about 6 months to really know, is this going to be a success or not? And that's a big time commitment. I'm putting in, I don't know, I tried to average it out, and it actually didn't really make sense. Maybe 45 minutes to an hour per video. So that ends up being 7 hours at most per week. And to do that for 26 weeks to determine if this is going to be a success, I mean, some people might think I'm crazy. Several people have told me that I'm crazy for trying to do this. But I think that it really could lead to something, and if it doesn't, at least I tried.
Yep, and there's definitely value to just having more material available. Even if after 6 months or so you decide that it's not paying off like you'd like, when you do have lots of people who are a fan of you, they'll start digging up more stuff, and they'll have more. They'll find your videos and have a couple of hours of additional entertainment and be happy about that. So,
yeah,
like it's basically a backlist of things besides books.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
All right, we spoke earlier about you feel like the most valuable thing you can do is grow a mailing list, and you gave a couple of ways that you can increase your subscriber count. First off, do you feel like sometimes people can be a little bit pesty with getting people to join their list? Like, what's the tipping point where you're just being spammy with your requests to join a list?
Well, I don't think you're ever spammy if you're giving something of value. I mean, and I mean, obviously, if you're saying doing it 12 times a day, that's too much. You got to use your internal sensors on that one a little bit. But people will be more likely to appreciate joining your list if you're giving them something they care about. And I mean, there's a great post. I can send you guys the links for show note purposes. Joanna Penn recently posted. She grew her mailing list from 600 people to 2,200 in 3 months using basically perma-free book with a picture in the front, a picture that linked to the mailing list, and the picture with the pretty cover and everything saying, I will give you a free novel. I think it's either a novel or a novella for joining my list. And I mean, it's in a perma-free book. People already like the perma-free, and then you're giving them another free entire book. People are fired up about that. Now, if you're posting, if you have it auto-posting to your Facebook once a day for the entire year, yeah, that's a little nuts. But if you can say, hey, on my latest email, I said this or wrote this cool post or did something that gives it a reason. Like, we've all been on those forums like K-boards and whatnot. You can't post a second time in the same week unless someone asks you for information. And the next time you post, you shouldn't just do a copy-paste. You should provide new information, something new, something different that actually gets people's eyeballs focused on your stuff.
Sounds like a good policy. On the other side of things, once you have people on your list, how often do you feel an email is called for, and do you think people can overdo it with sending out updates?
I think people can overdo it, but it's another case of if you're giving something awesome in your email, you could send out 2 a week if it's that great because people are excited about it. My wife works for Groupon, and they send daily emails because there's always crazy awesome daily deals for people to sign up to. And people stay on that list for years getting daily emails, and it's because there's value there. And so you need to provide value, but for me, I usually don't send more than 3 a month, and I've had times where I was trying to send out once a week, but I got a little, I think that I didn't have great material always, and that made my list suffer. So I think that you've got to assess how often can you do it while still providing value, and then you have to say, like, is this really worth it? Are my people going to be excited? Because if they're not going to be excited, then you probably should save it in your draft folder until it's going to be exciting.
All right. Now, I'd like to bring up the subject of investing in your marketing. Like, for example, if we circle back to YouTube for a second, did you buy any equipment to make sure that your YouTube show was had a better and more professional feel? Like, do you have a specific YouTube setup for that?
Yep, I spent about $500, and it was very well spent. First was the camera. It was a Canon EOS M, which is the bottom of the line DSLR camera, which is one of the best camera types out there. And some of them are over $1,000, but this one apparently had the same video quality as the $1,500 cameras, but really terrible photo quality. I didn't need it for photos, so I picked that up. I already had a little bit of lighting equipment, but I decided to just really jack it up. I have this Cowboy Studio lighting equipment, which comes with 2 stands and 3 stands, 1 little one and 2 big ones, and each of them has a light socket. But I read you can get a 4-socket adapter so that you can actually jack it up with 4 lights in each. I have one pointing at me right now to give it a nice fill in here. For my videos, I have 2 pointing at me, 1 to the back. The 2 in front of me each have 4 lights each. One of the best lights is a 5500K daylight bulb. They're like those coily ones. They're bright. You can tell I know technical stuff like crazy. The coily ones, But
Compact fluorescent, I think they're called.
What was that?
Compact fluorescent.
There we go. See? I'm glad someone smart is here. So I'm using those 8 compact fluorescents all pointing at me. I'm using one for a backlight off to the side. And so I've got those items, and then I have a lavalier microphone that I clip onto my shirt, and I always wear shirts like this for some reason. People have tended to like my color-coded shirts, so now I'm just wearing them in every interview too. But so I have the lavalier microphone, which actually plugs directly into my phone, and I use a program called Voice Record Pro to record the to record my videos, and then I sync them up on my computer. I don't use a really good editing program. I use ScreenFlow, which is a premium program. I had used it for doing screen capture stuff for courses and whatnot. But it works fine as an editor thing, and I already had it. If I went out of my way, I probably could have, spent some money on an editing program. But then there are like little other things. Like it adds up. You have to get a card for holding the videos on your camera. You have to get a AC adapter that plugs into your camera so that it'll keep working while you're shooting for long amounts of time. There's a lot on the checklist that you have to go down and do, but it's so much better than any video I've ever done. The quality is so good, and I'm really happy with the investment I've made so far.
So you're definitely of the opinion that you sort of have to spend money to make money.
With this, especially since I knew I was going to try to make over 300 videos, if I'm going to do it, I have to do it right. And like if you divide it by 500 by 300, really the cost per video is pretty good.
Yeah.
So
I gotta say, I checked your YouTube channel while I was researching for this interview, and the lighting makes a difference. I find that the biggest difference between a video that's like sort of pleasant to watch and a video that just seems unprofessional is the lighting, like we have right here. My investment in improving the lighting for this was to take the lampshade off of my lamp. So haven't quite rolled the same dollars into it, but on the subject of investment, how do you assess return on investment? Like, it's hard to assign a dollar value to the return on a marketing strategy, but like for the YouTube, for example, what sort of numbers do you think would justify the investment that you put into it?
Well, caught me right before I was going to take a drink. I think you need to consider some of the other things that authors tend to spend money on and what type of return they're going to get. A book bub, is going to cost $300. Let's just say like one of the top ones is $500 to make it equal here. For people on BookBub, they want to get at least their money back and more. Ideally they hope to double it or triple it. That doesn't always happen, but so you need to consider like, well, how many people are going to click over from my books, from my videos to my books? Now, I haven't done a great job with this so far, but my plan is to really get trackable links into all of my videos so that I can actually see, use, like smarturl.it or something like that, where I can see, okay, I've gotten 500 clicks through this, 20 people have bought, so maybe I'm at $2.99 a piece, that's $40. So spent 500, made 40. Obviously, that wouldn't be the greatest return for direct book sales, but there's lots of other things. Like you said, it's kind of a backlist of content for me. One of my shows is me actually reading Ted Saves the World, and already on the first video I got multiple comments that said, okay, I kind of want to read this now. And these were people who knew me from Sell More Book Show but didn't really see the fiction side of me, and that's partly what this is all about. Like, see that I have this other side and see that I have the fiction stuff. So it's going to be a little bit tough to figure out that return for sure, but I wouldn't have spent $500 if I didn't feel comfortable spending it. You have to assume that every dollar you put in you're going to lose. You need to be financially prepared for that. I'm hoping that isn't going to happen, that I just don't make a single cent off of it. But I'm pretty confident that, I'll reach 1/50th of John Green status on YouTube, and that'll get me 1/1000th the results, and that'll still be good. So.
All right, well, that's good to know. Yeah, I find one of the major things that I'm missing. I used to run I used to pay very close attention to the analytics on my author site, and I don't so much anymore because, frankly, my author site is for updates and not for selling books right now. I'm going to be revamping it in a bit.
Yeah.
But I find that analytics is sort of addictive. Like when you find out, oh, where the books are coming from, and trying to check off, oh, well, I've got people from all of these countries now. So I definitely think there's value in having any sort of marketing that you can then directly track the feedback from. We're getting toward the end of the hour. I only have one more question, and that's, what would be your advice to new authors starting out? Do you think that marketing is something that starts from the very beginning, or do you think once you have your list together and your, let's say, your backlist, your content together, do you start marketing then?
I think marketing starts from the beginning. I really do. I mean, even though I had done nonfiction, when I started fiction, I was almost like a whole new game. No one knows me as a fiction author. And my plan revolved around getting those books to look very professional. That was all part of my marketing plan from the beginning. I did a photo shoot with actors locally to get my covers to look really pretty and to look like they were part of the genre. I did a lot of studying of the genre to see that there were two people standing in the foreground with crazy cool background, and that was kind of the YA superhero-y vibe. And so I did two different photo shoots to take 7 cover photos, to take 7 different covers, photos that would work for those, and I would do the background later. Like, I tried to set that up. Me and a virtual assistant, we went through Author Marketing Club's Reviewer Grabber, emailed 1,000 people individually, because otherwise it's spam, individually saying, would you be interested in reviewing this book? And that helped me push over 100 reviews for book 1. So you need to have marketing in mind from the beginning, because it's going to be so hard to... There's more and more content out there. You need to crack through at some point, whether you're getting into the Amazon algorithm or you're going to try to make some waves at Kobo, Google Play, Apple, etc. You need to have it in mind from the beginning, because if you try to go back and course correct, you have a cover you made in MS Paint and you have a blurb that has 10 spelling errors. I mean, I'm not a big proponent of having a big book launch or anything, but that first month is pretty crucial in some of those recommendation algorithms and when you first get in there. And I mean, there's that big post of Rachel Aaron when she launched her new series and killed it with like tens of thousands of sales, and partly that was because she had gotten into the recommendation algorithm really early, and I think really early is key for that. And that means day one, let's say you're going to write a book in 120 days. Day one is also the first day of marketing. So you have 120 days to plan out your marketing, and it should all definitely be in there from the beginning as part of your plan. And that can be overwhelming, but this isn't about solely creativity. If the solely creative people won, we'd be in a very different world. It's the people who are creative, who are creatively entrepreneurial as well, and that is something that new authors really need to consider. They need a lot of energy to get through this, and I've been accused of being pretty nutty for trying to do all this stuff, and I am. So you need to be a little bit nutty to try new things and to be prepared to market from the beginning.
Yeah, I think that that's absolutely true. It's funny, when I first went pro, when I started writing full time, and we were like, we were planning for failure. Like, what happens when Joe eventually goes back to work? And my brother was saying to me, well, you're gonna have a 3-year hole in your resume. I'm like, I would like to say that I was running a small business during that time, because
Yeah,
you're an author. You are a publishing company when you're a self-publisher.
for sure. For
So
sure.
that means you're also the marketing department.
Yep.
All right, and that completes my list. So I guess we'll toss back to Lindsay, perhaps, to sign us off.
All right. Well, thanks for all the great information, Brian. If you have a second, I was kind of curious from hearing you talk about your cover art there. How did you go about doing a photo shoot, and can I ask what the price range was for something like that?
Did two different photo shoots. Each one cost um, around $700, and that didn't include the covers actually getting designed. I really lucked out on finding a cover designer beyond from that, and ended up being around $550 for three covers after that. So you could say that each one was, I guess, around $1,200 for getting three covers, which if you hire a cover artist, a really good one, that kind of ends up being the exact same. Uh, so anyway, photo shoot. I found actors from a local college around here, Northwestern University. I have photographers that I'm friends with who gave me a really nice deal on doing a photo shoot and editing and giving me the touched up photos. And I had a makeup artist who really did bring a lot to it, helped with the costumes, which all the actors just brought all their clothes basically, and the most YA superhero-ish clothes were the ones they wore. But had those actors do the first three covers. I didn't know how well it was going to go for the book, so I didn't know, well, should I try to do all seven? I don't even know what's happening in the last half of the series yet. But after the first book did pretty well out of the gate, uh, and one of the actors was about to move to New York, I said, okay, I'm doing another cover shoot a couple months in, got the actors back, same photographer, same makeup artist, and man, was it fun. It was just, I mean, these two college kids, they're not like professional models. They're definitely good actors, but, you know, we're doing these poses, which we kind of base some of the poses off other books in the genre, and we were just having a awesome time. I mean, I'm a comedy guy from the beginning, and so it was just goofy. But first one, I would say $700. Second one, probably closer to $800 because you have to give people a raise. And yeah, I mean, they were great. They were like sharing the books. The actors were sharing the books and getting the word out. So I would recommend that if you want your cover to look really professional, you have to put in professional dollars. Stock art is great, and sometimes you find like the perfect art, and that's amazing, but sometimes the perfect art isn't going to exist, and when you have a whole series, finding that same actor in those same poses might be tough. So getting it to the point where you know what the actor, I mean, I'm a control freak, so getting the actors to do what I wanted them to do and in those poses, it really helped out.
All right. Well, thank you for answering my questions on that. I definitely see in science fiction and fantasy that things were kind of going that way with the photo shoots and then maybe an illustrated background. You know,
Yeah.
I think most authors, indie authors, not going to be able to afford that starting out, maybe depending on where they come from, but especially when you're doing a whole series, because I'm actually doing something similar with my next series. You know, you do the Photoshop once or maybe twice, and you get enough pictures, and you can use it for 8 books. So
Yeah.
it's not quite as expensive if you look at it that way. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
something to think about.
No, I agree. And I think, I mean, you mentioned the cost thing. I love savings accounts. I love stocking away a little bit every month for over a long time. My wife got me into that. I was terrible with money before I met her. If you know you're going to have this $1,200 expense coming up, uh, maybe you hold off 6 months to a year, start saving up that $50 a month, that $100 a month. Over time, you know, eat out a little less and spend a little less money at the movies, and you put that money towards your nicer, newer covers, and it's going to pay dividends.
Definitely a good point and a good attitude to have. I think you're going to be super successful as an author. You know, you're already off to a great start, so I'm going to look
Thank you.
forward to following your career. Thanks for talking it to us, and why don't you let people know? It sounds like you've got a couple of websites and a couple of places they should check out. So feel free
Yeah.
to plug anything you like here.
Okay, well, I'll save it. I'll leave it to 3. I'll whittle it down. Um, you can check out my YouTube channel. I'm doing a video every single day there. It's Bryan Cohen Showen, and that's Showen. It's really dumb. So you can check out Bryan Cohen Showen. You can go to my fiction website, which is bryancohen.com, and that's Bryan with a Y. And you can check out the Sell More Books Show podcast at sellmorebookshow.com.
All right. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show tonight, and it was really great talking to you.
Yeah, same here. Thanks for having me on, guys.
I appreciate all the info. Thank you.
So long.
So long.